just walked in, scared the poop out of me. Oh, that's not how you're supposed to start a meeting. I'm Paige, I'm an alcoholic. Oh, awesome. Alrighty, so where we're going to be picking up today is on page 26. And just like Peppa said, we're going to be at the second full paragraph. So he returned to this doctor. But it probably helps just a little bit if I explain who this guy is, who's the doctor, what's going on. So let's set the stage. Now we've got this guy, and man, he has got money, and his name is Rowland Hazard the Third. And you know, you got numbers after your name. Oh, you got money. You got some letters before your name. You got smarts. I got neither. So we got this guy, Rowland Hazard the Third. And he's struggling with alcoholism. And he's throwing his money and his family's money behind it. And he's trying everything and anything that he can do to get sober. And he sees the best psychiatrists, the best psychologists, probably the best fancy spas and whatever they had in the United States. And nothing is working. Now, can I relate, maybe not to all the fancy money and psychologists and psychiatrists, but can I relate to that idea that nothing is working, that I'm not able to get sober, that I'm not able to stay sober? And that was his experience. And then out of desperation, he turns himself to the best, one of, if not the best, psychiatrists in all of history, Dr. Carl Jung. See, this guy was not slumming it. He was doing the fancy doctors, and he had the money to go do it. So he goes all the way to Switzerland, and he works intensively with Dr. Carl Jung. And he has this experience where he's like, you know, this time's different. Anyone ever do rehab and think this time's different? Anyone have that feeling, ooh, this one's different, right? And he had that feeling of this time's different. And he knew so much about himself. He learned about what was going on with him. He learned about what was motivating him. He did a lot of intensive work. And he's like, man, there is absolutely no way that I'm going to drink again. What happened? He drank again. And it's a surprise to those who do not understand alcoholism. You see, I'm just going to talk about this just a little bit. Because alcoholism has two main symptoms. The first is the allergy of the body that once I start to drink, I can't control the amount that I take. But the second main symptom is the obsession of the mind. The thought that I have when I'm sober that takes me back again and again to the first drink. And so when we look at why did Rowland Hazard relapse? He has all this money, all these connections, all these supports. He worked intensively with Dr. Carl Jung, one of the most famous men in psychology and psychiatry. Why did he drink again? And that is the question that he's going to ask the doctor. I love that I can kind of hear the chit-chat from the other room. Oh, they're talking about me. Well, that's good. Me too. I'm talking about me too. I got alcoholism. I love it. I love it. The shenanigans. All right. So it says, so he returned to the doctor whom he had admired and asked him point blank why he could not recover. And I mean, I'd be a little truculent myself if I had paid all that money to work with Dr. Carl Jung and then I drank again. I mean, I think I'd want a, money back guarantee. But he's like, dude, and by the way, Rob has the exact transcripts of the conversation. I'm making a joke. Rob has the exact transcripts of the conversation, and how it went was, dude, what the heck, Carl? I spent all this money? Like, what the heck? And Dr. Carl Jung, the well-known, renowned Swiss psychiatrist said, oh, my bad, homie, my bad. And that's what we're getting into. With the history, we take it with a grain of salt. We got Rob here. I can tell sometimes we got one of the other history husbands in the background, so I gotta watch myself. But I'm gonna take the liberties while I can. Alrighty. So it says he asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He wanted more than anything else to have control and to have choice. And the power of choice is that ability to say, I'm not going to drink and have that have any real effect. And it says he seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'll throw it out. Does that sound like any of you? Like, well-balanced? It doesn't sound like me, to be honest. At no point have I been described as well-balanced. I mean, at no point. But were there other areas of our life where we're able to show up in a reasonable way, in a rational way, to be successful in life? I mean, not me, but I know you guys. You guys, look at you. But it said he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? So when it comes to alcohol, we have no control and we have no choice. He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. And this is probably the most famous or second most famous psychiatrist in all of history. This well-known man who was probably like one of the smartest guys around at that time. And this was his prognosis to Rowland Hazard. The diagnosis and the prognosis, and here it is. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. Now, if you're writing in your book today, you can make a little note where it says hopeless. Utterly hopeless. That is my prognosis, that I have a condition that is hopeless. It says he could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was a great physician's opinion. So he's going back to Dr. Carl Jung and is like, come on, like what happened? He's begging him. And the doctor's like, yeah, the best I got for you is you could hire a bodyguard. Or, because he could afford it. I could not afford a bodyguard. Or, put yourself in one of those fancy institutions where you're locked away. Not where they have the ones with the spa treatment, not the ones with the cold water showers, not those ones. But I would read that for years and I'd think, whoa, that's some bad news, Rowland Hazard. Sucks to be you. Yikes, that's not good. But here's the news. It's not just bad news, Rowland, bad news bears. It's bad news page. Let's go to the very bottom of page 24. And let's see what the prognosis is for us, for me. Very bottom paragraph, page 24. It says, when this sort of thinking, again, the thinking that we are describing is the obsession of the mind. The obsession of the mind is the thought that I have when I am sober that takes me back again and again to the first drink. And it says is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies. Those alcoholic tendencies are the allergy of the body. That once I start to drink, I cannot control the amount that I take. Does that sound a little familiar? I have a feeling some of us are feeling a little called out. Yikes, right? When this sort of thinking, the obsession of the mind, is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, the allergy of the body, here it is. He has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up may die or go permanently insane. So when Dr. Carl Jung, the eminent psychiatrist, is saying you've got to lock yourself up, and I'm thinking that's bad news. That news is mine. That prognosis is mine. That unless I am locked up, I'm going to die of this illness. I'm going to go permanently insane. That's the prognosis that I have for my alcoholism, which is not good. It's a real downer to kick off this big book study. Yikes. But here's my experience when I can accept that hopelessness. That's when I'm able and willing to accept the hope that is on offer. You see, when I can see the reality of my predicament, that's when I'm able to accept our solution. Let's go back to page 26 and let's talk about what the solution is. So we're going to go to the very, very bottom paragraph, page 26, right after it says, that was a great physician's opinion. And it says, but this man still lives. Rowland Hazard. Well, not now, but at the time of the writing. It's been a while, But this man still lives and is a free man. I want to emphasize that. What's on offer is freedom, real freedom. And I don't just mean I'm sober today and I'll take 24 and I'll pass it on. And if I don't drink, I'll be sober tomorrow and I'll be sober another day. That's that. Listen, I've done that. That's not freedom. Freedom. And of course, it does mean literally not locked up in an institution. But if I get going too loud, they'll probably lock me in this room. I'll behave myself. That's actually a promise I can't keep. I shouldn't have said it. Alrighty. Oh. It says, but this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard. Oh, thank goodness. Because I don't know. I do budget with vibes, but the vibes are telling me that's out of budget for this girl. I cannot afford a bodyguard. And it says he can go anywhere on this earth. Even London, isn't it? I've been picking up that, isn't it? It doesn't bother them at all when I say that all the time. We're in Southall, isn't it? Twickenham, isn't it? I'll stop. That's a lie as well. Keep going, isn't it? It's going to be awful when I get back to North America. It'll get worse already. We can go anywhere on this earth where other free men may go without disaster. Provided. So we'll notice that this idea that he can go anywhere on earth, that's a little like a promise. But like every promise in this book, it's given with a condition. And this is the condition. So if I extrapolate what Rowland's experience is, that I can go anywhere on earth, here's the condition. It is provided that I be, so him, but in my case, me, provided that I remain willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. What is that certain simple attitude? Because listen, I've been told about my attitude a whole bunch, and I'm like, I don't know what attitude I need. So the attitude is that there is a power greater than myself, and that is the power that keeps me sober. And that's the orientation that I need. And the reason I'm describing it in that way is because when I know that of myself, I cannot stay sober, but there is a power, there is an answer, there is a solution, and I'm willing to turn to that. I'm willing to seek that. And to grow that. That's the attitude. So is that something that I'm willing to go after, right? And if we're willing to go after it, and we're willing to grow it, and we're willing to deepen that experience, we can even go to, I was going to pronounce it wrong. I was like, Hounslow. I'm like, I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. I know. I'm trying to get, she's giving me the pronunciation through the wall, and I'll just keep getting it wrong. I'll come back. I'll pick it up. All right. So it says, some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. And this is another example of the book meeting us where we're at. See, if you're here at the study today and you're hearing me talking about a power greater than ourselves, if you're hearing me talk about God, higher power, creator, the spirit of the universe, and you're like, ew, gross. No, thank you. That's like the black pudding of suggestions page. I don't want nothing about it. That's a very specific joke. And some of you might like that. So if you like that pudding, you have it. That's cool. All for you. But it's the book meeting us where we're at. The book meeting me in my resistance. The book meeting me in my denial. The book meeting me in my old ideas. And man, no, thank you. I don't want spiritual help. And what I love is the book is not only going to meet us where we're at, it's going to take us where we need to go. And I always like to emphasize this. If the book Alcoholics Anonymous is going to meet me where I'm at and take me where I need to go, is it possible that that is what God or higher power or the spirit of the universe can do as well? To meet me where I'm at, to meet me in my resistance, to meet me in my unwillingness, to meet me even if I'm wrapped up like a little babushka doll, just having a little like cuddle, right? That God can meet me there and take me where I need to go. So it says, let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor, Dr. Carl Jung. The doctor said, you have the, and I want to emphasize, mind of a chronic alcoholic. For our purposes, when we talk about the mind of an alcoholic or the mind of a chronic alcoholic, what we are specifically talking about is the obsession of the mind. That might not have been fully what Dr. Carl Jung was referencing, but the message that is being given to us is the focus on the obsession of the mind. Because that, we might have some characteristics, who here gets frustrated at a roundabout, but that doesn't make me alcoholic, we got some, right? What makes me alcoholic is lack of control and lack of choice. And so when we talk about the mind of a chronic alcoholic, what we can look at is, have I had those thoughts where I have said, that's it, I am never, ever going to drink again? And a day, a week, man, even the same day, a day later, a week, a month, even a couple months or a year down the line, I have a drink in my hand and I did it again. Can I relate to that? A thought that I have when I am sober that tells me this time will be different. It tells me nobody will ever know. It tells me there's no alcoholics in London, It'll tell me that the alcohol is totally different and I won't end up behind dumpsters. By the way, when we were on the trip, we took a lot of pictures of me beside dumpsters because that felt accurate. Pinkies up. But that idea that when I'm sober, I have that thought that takes me back again and again to the first drink. That's what we want to see. And he says, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. So it says, I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you. So here's a doctor who is tremendously influential in modern culture and society, let alone psychology, with all the skills and acumen of one of the most prestigious individuals. And what he is saying is, people like you do not recover. People like you, Paige. If you have examples, Paige, of your own life of where you said, I'm not going to drink again, only to go back to it again and again and again, man, you're not going to get well on human power. That's what he's saying, that hopelessness. And it says, our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. And you can almost hear that clang. And the thing about the gates of hell, they don't swing both ways. And at this point in our history, step one didn't exist. There were no steps. There were no course of action. But that feeling like the gates of hell had closed on me like a clang, that there is no hope, that there is no solution, that I am going to drink again despite myself, that is what I like to call a step one experience. And that's where I'm trying to get to with step one, to see man, the relapse is coming. I don't want it to. I need to stay sober. I want to stay sober, but I can see that there's nothing that I can put between me and the first drink. That's right where Rowland is at. You can almost hear Rowland in a place of desperation where he said to the doctor, is there no exception? He's at that place where he's willing to do anything. He's come to the end of himself. If he hasn't come to the end of his pocketbook, Now, I probably had more money, but money. But is there no exception? And it says, yes, replied the doctor, there is. And from that place of Rowland Hazard's hopelessness is what is being introduced is the hope. And it is the hope that is for somebody like me, but it's also the hope for each and every one of us here today. It says exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. And this is the moment where we are given our solution. The solution that we have, when it says there is a solution, the solution that we have is a vital spiritual experience. The word vital just means life, life-giving, because this is kind of a life or death deal, right? Life-giving spiritual experience. That is the solution. And that's what I need. I need that. And so if you're like, but what the heck is a spiritual experience? Like, what is that? Like, you tell me I need that. Have I had one? Like, where do I get one? Is it a Tesco's? Like, where do I get Sainsbury's? It's a Sainsbury's, let me tell you. Where do Marks and Spencer's? Sorry, I'm just listing things now. Where do I get it? And what is it, right? So how we're going to get it is through the course of action that's laid out in this book, The 12 Steps. And here's what a spiritual awakening looks like. And I always think, or I've always felt like this is one of the better description of spiritual awakenings. There's so many in this book. But here it is. It says, here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. And it says, to me, these occurrences are phenomena. And my brain is always like something like a phenomena. And that's all I will sing, because that is my gift to you, that I will stop that right there. And as Rob put in the chat, the description of a phenomena is an unusual, unexplained event. Like, these were things that were once in a million struck by lightning experiences. He doesn't know how to get them, how to experience them. And he then describes them. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. So let's talk about that. So huge changes to how I show up emotionally. Now, I know you guys, even keel, all the time, none of you have had a bad day and know what it's like. I'm sure nobody here, knows what it's like. You spill the coffee and you just have a little mentee bee, little mental breakdown, just as a treat, just for you, just a little mentee bee. But I'm driven by these emotions. When I'm disconnected, when I'm not doing this deal, I'll tell you what I look like, what my emotional life looks like. I wake up and the voices are going. And the voices are saying, I hate myself, I shouldn't be here, I should kill myself, I hate myself. And then I go up and I got to show up to something, right? And the whole time I'm like, they hate me, I don't fit, I don't belong, they hate me, I don't fit, I don't belong. And then I show up and the whole time I'm there, I'm like, man, I was weird, I was awkward, I'm being weird, I'm being awkward. And I think about how weird and awkward and awful and everyone hates me the whole time. And then somebody does something. Do you guys kind of know what I mean? That's how I operate. I don't know what yours looks like. But like for me, it's like life. It's like the volume of life was turned up too loud. And I got sensory issues, y'all. Like, it's too much. That's what my emotions are like. Now, this does not make me alcoholic. But this is what we're going to treat. And so what we're saying is when we talk about this huge emotional displacement, man, I'll talk a little about this. I was like Eeyore by the time I got here. And while I was here for a while, Eeyore, you know Eeyore? I've lost my tail. Oh no, I've got to get sober. Oh no, that's who I am. On my own power, I'm miserable. Literally, life's too much. I'm negative. I'm self-deprecating. That's who I am. Now, what's happened? Because now it's like, girl, you're a little much, tone it down. And like I said at the meeting in Ealing Green, listen, I couldn't have, even if I tried. This joint thing that's happened does not have an off switch. Well, I mean, it would if I stopped doing the work, but let's not do that. And so it's this idea that how I am emotionally led today is different. That I'm not taking things as personally. I'm able to show up with that idea of how can I help? How can I serve? That ability to show up with laughter and joy and to not take myself so seriously and to take an active interest in the people around me, to actually care about the people in my life. Love you! They heard it. Like that, to be in that place, right? And then it says, it goes on to say, ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly. And I want to pause on suddenly, because it will take work. But I always want to emphasize, it does not take long to recover. It does not take long to have a spiritual experience. It does not take long to get well, but it does take some work. It does take the action of all 12 steps as a way of life, but we can get well very, very quickly. We don't have to wait. And it goes on so when it says ideas, emotions, and attitudes, well, I'll tell you, I had a whole lot of ideas. Most of them weren't great. I can fix him. That's just an example of an idea that I had. And then emotions, we saw I was led by them. Man, I was somebody who was all over the place emotionally. And attitudes, negative, self-deprecating, hating myself, judgmental, critical. I know you guys can't relate to that, especially when I'm doing a big book study. Nobody here falls into judgment. I'm just kidding. I don't mind if you do. And so somebody's got to take my inventory. I'm just kidding. It's me. I take my inventory. I do it quite regularly, a daily basis. I'm good on that. All right. It says, ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. So I'm led and driven by selfishness, self-centeredness, fear, insecurity, self-loathing, self-hatred, guilt, and shame. And very quickly that is removed, and what begins to flow through me is genuine concern for others, love for others, that ability to not take myself so seriously. Joy, happiness, peace, serenity. That's what begins to flow. That's what we're talking about. And if that does, and I always talk about how I stole this from Terry, who I'm pretty sure stole this from Babe, Babe, he's here, that's why I'm giving an extra shout out, love you, but that idea that this is a book of mirrors, right? And just as much as I can hold myself up to Rowland's experience, did I go to rehab? Did I go to doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, counselors, drug counselors, like all these things, and did they not work? I hold my experience up to that light. I can hold my experience up to this light. Have I had this phenomena, these huge emotional displacements and rearrangements? Have I experienced where my ideas, emotions, and attitudes that were guiding me are cast aside and a new set begins to dominate them? Is that my experience? And if that's not my experience today, that's okay if you're like, girl, no, absolutely not. But would I want that? Would I want to be led by something different? Would I want to not be driven by fear and insecurity, but to be led by peace? Would I want that? And then Dr. Carl Jung says, in fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangements within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employ are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. Now it says, go to Appendix 2. We're not going to do that yet. I always like to make a joke about asterisks. Don't tell me what to do. I do what I want. We're not listening to you. And then when we get to We Agnostics, just for those of you that are like, but I want to go to the Appendix 2. Don't you worry, we will. But I like to do it when we get to We Agnostics, because that's the time it says, please be sure. And I'm like, well, since you asked me politely, all right, we'll go over there. So one of the things I also want to point out about Dr. Carl Jung is last week we were talking about some of the myths that have been told in regards to the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I always try to add my own. I'm just kidding. But a lot of the myth was that Rowland Hazard, he wanted to see Sigmund Freud, but thankfully he wasn't able to. Now, that story not true, but that story does help us to see some deeper truths. So why would that story be told? Well, Sigmund Freud believed that all problems and all matters of the mind could be solved in and of the mind. But that wasn't Carl Jung's belief. Carl Jung had the belief that there were some conditions, there were certain things that required a power beyond themselves, that required a spiritual awakening. And we last week I spoke a little bit, and if I do well for time, we'll talk about our boy. He doesn't have to be your boy. He's my guy, William James. Woo! And he wrote this book called Varieties of Religious Experience. It actually wasn't a book; it was a series of lectures given in Edinburgh. Did I say it right that time? Probably not, but I said it with emphasis. So that's the trick. You don't have to pronounce it right. You just say it confidently and move on. That's the trick to pronunciation. Oh God, I'm gonna get a lot of 4-column inventory or some strongly worded emails or something. Oh, but carrier pigeons, I will take complaints via carrier pigeon. That still holds. All right. But when we talk about this idea of Dr. Carl Jung, I always like to share this story. There's this famous BBC interview with Dr. Carl Jung. And in it, they're interviewing him, and I won't remember. I'll be honest, I will not put it in the WhatsApp chats or anything like that, but somebody else might. I'm not making Rob do it. I'm just going to throw it out to the universe, and somebody will do it. It doesn't have to be Rob. He does enough, unless he wants to. You don't have. I'm just being a dink, but. There's this famous BBC interview where they're interviewing Dr. Carl Jung. And they're asking him, growing up, did you believe in God? And he says, yeah, growing up, I believed in God. And then they say, do you believe in God now? And Dr. Carl Jung says, no. And there's a bit of a pause. And what he says is, no, I've got no need for belief. And there's another pause. And he says, I know. I know. So he doesn't need belief because he has knowing. And that is what is on offer. Now, as we get into in a couple chapters, we're going to get to step 2, where all that is required is that maybe, possibly, there could be a power greater than myself. Maybe Peppa's got better things to do on a Wednesday night than show up and be of service at ODAAT, if there's, and lie about her experience of God in it. But maybe there's a power. That's all that's needed. But what we get to experience is that Rob found it and he even put it in the chat right now. Look, goodness gracious, you can just tune me out and go watch that. Some of you are like on it right now. Yeah. Love it. But that idea that I get to have a felt, lived experience, and that's what I need. See, you guys know that day? We've all had one of those days where just our nerves are shot. And everybody has just, I don't know what got into the water, but everyone is annoying. It can't be me, but it's got to be everyone. Everyone's just annoying. They're driving wrong. They're doing it wrong. And just, when it's on you, that black fog, it's just on you. And you go and you sit down, whether it's at a bar or a pub, or you're sitting at home. And you get that drink and you put it before you. What am I after? I'm after that experience of the, when you get it in you, that's what I'm after. If you tell me about a drink when I'm having one of those days, did you know if you imbibe upon this sort of alcohol, it will produce an intoxicating effect and your liver will blah, blah, blah. And you know what I mean? I'm not getting that relief and I need that relief. And just as much as that is, I need that experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't need to talk about, it's wonderful to talk about, but I don't need to talk about the power. I don't need to believe in the power. I don't need to like in the power. I don't need to try to figure out the power. What I need, just like I needed a drink, is I need an experience. And that is the purpose of the 12 steps, to bring about this experience. So, what he was saying is, in fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangements within you. He was like, I was trying to give it to you, and for the amount I was charging you, I ought to have, He didn't say that. Well, I don't know. Rob will maybe back me up if I make things up. I shouldn't do that. Poor Rob. I just under the bus today. So it says, with many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. Let's take a moment, because what is the description of Rowland Hazard as an alcoholic? So it has nothing to do with Mr. Hoity-toity. He's got the fancy postal code, right by the airport or whatever. It's not about that. What is it about? It's about he cannot stay sober when he wants to. Does that sound like me? And if I try, and keep in mind, Rowland Hazard, he was trying all these other human methods. Did I try all these other human methods, and did they fail? It goes on to say, upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, which I'm like, I don't know if he heard the same news that I heard, I don't know how he got to relief. That was not good news. But our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that after all, he was a good church member. That like, but I went to church. Well, it says this hope, however, was destroyed. By the way, have you ever had like your hope destroyed by your sponsor? When you're like, I just fell madly in love, and it's really lust with Mr. Right, and it's really Mr. Right now, or in my case, Mr. Right out of jail. But yeah, some of y'all know. Some of you have better taste. Pinkies up. Good for you. But that your hope is destroyed by your sponsor just being very like, hey, is it possible? Would you consider? So I imagine that Carl Jung is like, is it possible that perhaps, maybe, it's like destroyed? What do you mean we're sensitive people, This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary, vital spiritual experience. So what Carl Jung said was like, dude, and he said that verbatim, dude, it's great that you go to church and all, because that means at least you're open to a spiritual awakening. That's great. We don't have to like overcome that bridge. Good. But he said the odds of this thing happening to you are like the odds of you getting struck by lightning. You can't just hang out in a church pew and hope this thing happens for you, even if it's a hoity-toity church pew, You've got to go out and seek it. You've got to go out and find it. And so what was growing in popularity at the time was a movement that was known as the Oxford Group, the Oxford Movement. And they, in and of themselves, had nothing to do with alcoholism. They had helped some alcoholics. We got Bill Pickle. They had helped some of them. Yeah. If I was at home on the computer, I'd be like, Bill Pickle. I got some of my pickle stickers. I brought them across the pond. That was a tongue twister I didn't mean to add. But pickle sticker across the pond. But their whole focus didn't have to do with alcoholism, didn't have to do with drug addiction. Their whole focus was about living a life that was surrendered to God, the God of their understanding. The whole purpose was to bring about this experience of God. And Rowland Hazard, now he might have had a little bit more awareness than somebody like me had, because he's like, oh, a spiritual experience? I need one of those. And so he got involved with the Oxford Group. Now, the Oxford Group had a course of action that any human being could take. And it wasn't quite laid out like our 12 steps, like do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. But they had a series of ideas, a series of principles, a series of actions that would bring about this experience that would lead to this surrendered state. And so when Carl Jung gives Rowland Hazard knowledge of what our solution is, the spiritual awakening, that is one of the key components to what Alcoholics Anonymous is. The solution in Alcoholics Anonymous is the spiritual awakening. And from the Oxford Group, what we took, well, I mean, I was going to say we asked nicely, but I don't think we did. They didn't seem to mind. They were fine with it. What we took from them, not like, nicking something from the Tesco's, or from Marks and Spencer's. You got to make amends for that. But what they took was that course of action, which later became our 12 steps. And so in this moment, Rowland Hazard, he's got knowledge of the solution, the spiritual awakening. And he's got knowledge of what later became our program of action, the 12 steps. That program of action is how we get to the spiritual awakening. So it goes on to say, top of page 28. Here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience. Extraordinary, extraordinary, something outside of an ordinary day-to-day, an experience, not theory, not belief, not religious conviction, not was able to memorize things really well, but experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. And if also, I just want to point out, if you're here today and it's like, how would a spiritual experience keep me sober, Paige? I don't get it. When you talk about not being miserable, that sounds okay, because when I was miserable and people would talk about not being miserable, I couldn't even imagine what that would be like, and I was miserable in their general direction, but quietly, that's what I would do. Not you guys are great. But how would a spiritual awakening help? You see, if the root of the thrust of what my problem is as an alcoholic is that when I am sober, I have a thought that takes me back again and again and again to the first drink. That lie that I believe, what I need is a way to stop that thought. And so what do? Now, I got a lot of nods when we spoke about what I'm like when I'm sober. I'm restless, irritable, discontent. I'm filled up with me. I feel like I'm a raw, exposed nerve ending. I got that depression so bad I can't get out of bed. I got that anxiety so bad it feels like somebody's stabbing my shoulder blades. Now, that does not make me alcoholic. But what we treat is that. And I treat that with the spiritual awakening. And that pain of living in a place of separateness from this power. A conscious sense of separateness. That is what is driving the obsession of the mind. And so I treat that with conscious contact. I fill that hole in the depth of my soul with that connection to a power greater than myself. And when that is filled, it's no longer page on page, like bone on bone. And I have that sense of ease and comfort. I have that relief. And my brain no longer lies to me and tells me to take that first drink. That's how that works. Just if you're like, well, why do I need it? Because I don't want it. And if you're like, why do I need it? I don't want it. What our problem is the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body. So our problem, obsession of the mind, allergy of the body. And we have focus on those two because that's how I diagnose this thing. That's what's different. Alcoholics, that's what we have that normal people don't. Non-alcoholics will be spiritually sick. You'll find them on the roads. You'll find them at your HOA or PTA meeting, or where you'll find them. They're spiritually sick, but yeah, they're around. You'll find them. And some of you don't even have to look too far. All I had to do was look in the mirror, which I wasn't doing a whole lot of. But we focus on that because that's what differentiates me, and that is the problem: the obsession of the mind, the allergy of the body. The solution is the spiritual awakening, because if I treat that spiritual malady, I won't have the obsession to take that first drink. And if I don't have that thought to take that first drink, I won't take that first drink, and I will not set off the physical allergy. And how I get from that hopeless condition of obsession and allergy to the hope, to the solution, to the spiritual awakening, how I get there is the 12 steps, as outlined in this book, Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what this thing is. And when I make Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't make it that simple. Alcoholics Anonymous is that simple. But when I see that it is that simple, that tells me what I need to do. That tells me the attitude with which I need to have, the attitude that it was saying Rowland Hazard had. And it goes on. How am I doing for time? I got like 3 devices. I got one to tell me the time, one to do this, one to do the recording. We're thriving. I don't have a lot of time to talk about that. So what I will do instead, because the next part where we talk about the desperation of drowning men, man, I will go on a tangent for a while on that one. So I'm preparing myself to not like try to give Peppa like 30 seconds to wrap this bad boy up. So instead, what I will point out is when we talk on the top of page 28, that he had the extraordinary experience with which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. What I want to emphasize is that it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to have that spiritual experience. And it doesn't take long if you're brand new to Alcoholics Anonymous and you're here and you're like, somebody invited me and I don't know what's going on. And why is that girl, that Canadian, talking for so long? What's a Tesco's? You know what I mean? That totally. It does not take long to get well if you're brand new to this thing. It does not take long to recover. But also if you're here today and you're in and out and in and out and in and out, and you describe yourself as a chronic relapser, what I want you to know is it does not take long to get well in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you've been around this thing maybe a while, and maybe you've even been sober a while, but what I'm describing, what it's like to live with me, and you're like, man, that sounds like me. I don't like how I'm feeling. I don't like how I'm thinking. I can't stand the way my skin fits. What I want you to know is it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to have a spiritual awakening. It does not take long to recover. And it is available to each and every one of us. And one of the things is those of us who have recovered, who have had this experience, our very life depends on helping you find this experience. So if you've not had this experience yet, please let us help you. And that's where I'll end it. And give Peppa 5 whole minutes, which she'll need because sometimes Eileen's popping her head over the thing and it's probably distracting. So we'll give her as much time as we can. Over to you, Peppa.